Hi, Mike. Chris Matthews here with the CBS here in Las Vegas. I appreciate this. I was just wondering, I was listening the other day to NFL Network, and I thought it was an interesting conversation they had with J.J. Watt going to the Cardinals, and they talked about the Raiders. Do the Raiders have a person like a DeAndre that has cachet in the locker room that can maybe help attract those kind of free agents? Do you need a guy that has that kind of cachet? And in your opinion, who might be that person in the Raiders locker room that can reach out to these other free agents and say, hey, come to Vegas. This is the place to be.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation, and I think the guy that has the most cachet is our head coach. And I get questions about John Gruden all the time by people all over the country. And I think John has a special persona about him. I think Derek Carr has earned a lot of respect around this league from an awful lot of people. And I think in this day and age where players spend more time from opposing teams, through social media and whatever, players are always hanging out, talking, sending messages back and forth. I think in this day and age, there's more of that than there ever was. In the old days, it used to be kind of guys talking together at the Pro Bowl. Today it's all day, every day, all 32 teams, the players interact all the time. So I do think we have some guys that are highly respected throughout the league, and I think the fact that John Gruden is who he is, the city of Vegas is what it is, it's kind of an interesting recruiting tool for us.
Hey, Mike, Jerry McDonald. What can you tell us about any transactions that may or may not have been made leading up to the new league year? There's one out there real recently that says Gabe Jackson has been informed of his release.
Yeah, Jerry, there's really nothing I can tell you at this point. All the Raider business is going to stay with the Raiders, and when it comes time to announce a transaction, we will. I'm a big believer that all those things should be handled between the team and the player, and therefore I can't confirm or deny anything.
Hey, Mike, obviously, every offseason is crucial, but especially, going into year 3 and you all trying to make the playoffs this year, of course. What's just your overall kind of goal going into this offseason from a personnel standpoint, considering both what you have to do in free agency and the draft?
I want us to be really solid. I want us to make good decisions both in free agency and the draft. The free agency thing is different this year, and you guys talk about the salary cap all the time. I'm sure if you go back 2 years and say where was the cap going to be this coming season, the answer would have been plus or minus $225 million. And we're looking at 180 today. It's simple math. So the reality is every team in the league is going through conversations like never before as far as what's the best composition of your locker room, where do we have to make moves, how do we make those moves, and to me it always just goes back to you got to be really good in the draft and you got to build your team through the draft. And we've got to be, I think, smarter in free agency, better in free agency, and we've got to complement that with a really solid draft.
Mike, you guys made a pretty big investment in Trent Brown a couple years ago, and he hasn't been able to get on the field as much as you'd like. What do you need to see from him this offseason to be able to be confident you can go forward with him?
Yeah, Trent's whole thing is when he's healthy, in shape, and ready to go, he's as dominant as any tackle in football. And he proved that early in the 2019 season. Since then, it's been kind of a roller coaster. So really what he needs to do, I think more than anything, is get himself in the best shape of his life and come out ready to prove that he is a dominant tackle in the National Football League. And really that's all it takes. If Trent gets in shape and stays committed, there's not a better talent out there.
Hey, Mike, good to see you. Obviously, defense, hasn't performed to the level that you guys have wanted it to the last couple of years. And knowing what a crapshoot, the draft can be, and even to a certain extent, free agency, do you sort of, just because of the numbers and the way they work, kind of, go after defense as aggressively as maybe ever, knowing that, obviously not every draft pick is going to work out, but if you have sort of more invested on that side of the ball, more likelihood that you will get, more productive and impactful players on that side of the ball?
Yeah, I think every team's self-aware. What are our needs? How do you go about it? Can you fix some of them in free agency? If so, it's a little bit easier to target the draft. So when you go into the draft, I think the key to the draft is taking good football players every round, and that oversimplifies it. But if you use some common sense, and you've got an offensive player and a defensive player that are graded approximately in that same range, and maybe that defensive player fits a need, well, let's go get them. The flip side to that is if you're on the board in the third or fourth round or wherever, and there's an offensive player that's sticking out like a sore thumb because his grade is significantly higher than any of the defensive needs, I think you dilute the overall talent of your team if you don't take that offensive player. So really, I think it comes down to just trying to have the most thorough understanding that you can of where the strengths and weaknesses of the draft are, understand what league value is, and then try to have a little ability to move up and down the board, trade up, trade down, and try to take advantage of it to the best you can.
Mike, this is Hondo Carpenter. With the pandemic and all the limitations in scouting getting ready for the draft, how significantly does it help you in your team, which are known to be so extremely thorough?
A year ago, if you told me that we were going to be back in COVID restrictions in the offseason, I don't even know if I would have made it to today. So the frustrations of last year, did we learn any lessons? And I think it's important, especially for me, to kind of look back to last year in the draft and say, did we make any mistakes? And I think sometimes, I think we thought that we were in a good place because all 7 of our picks were in the first 4 rounds in a COVID year. And I think if you look back at it and you go, in a COVID year, should you be picking guys that perhaps are a projection from one position to another? We took the kid from Kentucky in the 3rd round and ended up trading him to Miami before the season started. That was a projection. He was a college slot receiver and a quarterback, and we tried to move him to running back in a pandemic year. And to be honest with you, I don't think it was fair to the kid. We don't even see him face-to-face live until training camp in July. You take Amik Robertson in the 4th round. He was an outside corner. And even though it doesn't sound like a big change to go to nickel, in a COVID year with no reps, trying to learn run fits in the corner or the nickel position that he never had to do before, that's asking a lot. So basically what I'm saying is that I think in a COVID year, you've got to be nimble and you've got to learn lessons and you got to try to leverage the draft for whatever you can. And right now, I had meetings again yesterday with all we had 11 or 12 days in a row with all the scouts, draft meetings. They're gone now. But what we talked about was trying to be flexible, be nimble. All 32 teams are under the same set of rules. So it's up to us to answer all those questions. Like for instance, the medical is going to be difficult this year for all 32 teams. It's going to come in late and it might not be as finite. We still have to get our answers. You can go to pro days, but you can't talk to players face to face. Well, we're going to travel all over the country, including myself, to watch kids work out live. I can't put them on the board. I can't take them out to dinner. I can't do anything to get to know this kid more. And that for me is the biggest part, because I think trying to get to know what's important to the kid, it's like if any of you guys have college age kids and you're worried about their fit, what college fits for them coming out of high school? And that's kind of the way I try to look at it. What's the best fit do we fit for this kid? Is he fit in our building? And if you don't get face to face with him, it's hard. You can do all the Zooms you want. We're doing Zooms right now. I guess you guys, but I think you guys would rather sit here and we could have a conversation face to face and you'd probably get a little more out of it.
Mike, it's Ed Graney from the Review Journal. You guys have been obviously very outspoken in your support of Derek and what you think he does for your team and your franchise. I was wondering, a person in your position, when perceived very elite top 5 guys supposedly are available, no matter how good you feel about a guy, is it incumbent upon teams to make calls on guys or to see what the deal might be? Or you say, no, my guy's the guy, I don't need to make that call?
That's crafty wording right there. I give you credit. You're a wordsmith right there. That was well done. Obviously, I can't talk about anybody else's players, so I won't. I'll just talk about Derek, and I'm going to tell you the same thing I've told you guys the last couple of years, which is I think Derek Carr had his best year yet under John Gruden. I think he's one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL, and we couldn't be happier with him. And I tell you every year, I mean, we evaluate every position every year. I have no idea who might call me or who might not call me. So you have to do the evaluations both on your own players and every other player in the league. And you got to stack your boards and understand what league value is all around the league. And we do that. But if you're asking me about Derek, I mean, I think John and I would both stand shoulder to shoulder and pound the table for Derek Carr.
Hi, Mike Levi, Damon, USA Today. I mean, obviously, you guys have a lot of your own free agents to think about, pending free agents, as it were. How are those negotiations going, and should we expect to see some more extensions before March 17th?
I think you probably can expect to see just about everything. When you're talking about a salary cap of plus or minus $180 million, we talked about that a little bit before. So you potentially could be talking to players about restructuring their contracts. You could be talking about releasing players. You can be talking about trading players. And the way I look at it, it's kind of a big jigsaw puzzle. And there's no one finite answer. But congruently, you've got to put it all together and make it make sense both economically and to put the best and most competitive football team on the field. So I think between now and March 17th, yeah, you're going to see every team in the league making a lot of moves.
Mike Levi Edwards, the past couple of years, you spent a lot of time and attention towards your secondary with someone that has much experience and expertise in the secondary as you. Is there any other prospects that jump out to you that you think maybe would or would not be a good fit for the Raiders? Just good secondary players coming out that really impress you.
What do you mean by that? Are you talking about are you asking me to name some players in the draft, or what are we talking about?
In the draft, yes, sir.
I think in the draft this year, as you said, we've expanded some resources in our secondary. We've got a first-round safety in John Abram. We've got a second-round corner, and who we think is going to be a very good football player. We've got a fourth-round corner in Amik Robinson, another first-round corner in Damon Arnett. And we mentioned Trayvon Mullen in the second, who we think is going to be a heck of a player. So really, what we need more than anything is for all those players to take it up a notch or two. And I'm talking about commitment to the game, work ethic, perseverance, being in the locker room, working with your brothers. All those things are critical. We've expended some draft capital on what we think are some very talented players. And now all of them need to take a collective step forward. So the draft this year, again, we know we need to get better on defense, and we're going to get after it, trying to get better on defense, both in free agency and the draft. But I couldn't tell you today where we're going to be on any defensive backs.
Hey, Mike, Vinny from the Review Journal. Two questions. Do you expect to be active in free agency? I know that there's limitations with the salary cap. Some moves need to be made. But do you expect to be active in free agency? And also, as it relates to Trent Brown, in reading between the lines, it sounds like he's going to be back. Is that the case? Is Trent Brown going to be the right tackle next year as you sit here today?
So question number one, how active can we be in free agency? I think we're going to be active. The question is at what level? We've been active players on day one and day two in the last couple of years. I think there's going to be a lot of depth in the free agency market this particular year. I think there are going to be more veterans out there on the market, and I think it's incumbent upon us to be patient. Would we take a shot at a high level player too? Sure, if we believed in the person and had the money available. But right now, I don't even know how much money we will or won't have available. That jigsaw puzzle is still taking place. But one way or another, I think we'll be active in free agency. I don't know if it'll be day one or week one or month one. But at some point, I would expect us to try to fill some holes in free agency. Regarding Trent, the jury's still out here. He's under contract, and again, we believe in the talent of that player. And there'd be nothing finer than, have Trent Brown at right tackle protecting Derek Carr next year, week one. But the jury's out, and we still have to make some decisions on our roster in general.
Hey, Mike, this is Vic. What are your thoughts on the top of the pass rusher class this year, and how does it compare to previous years, like recent years, I guess?
I think the pass rusher class in the first, say, 3 or 4 rounds is kind of intriguing. And I think there's different flavors in the top end. And I think you can get down into the third, fourth round and find some guys that maybe were at the Senior Bowl and some other places where you go, they're pretty intriguing role rushers. I think my impression coming out of our draft meetings is there's better depth to the outside edge class than I thought there was going to be.
You had a lot of guys in this draft who opted out and didn't play last year. What are the challenges of scouting those guys and try to sort of project where they will be in 2021 after not seeing them on the field for a year?
Yeah, it's an intriguing question, and there's a lot of layers to that. And part of it is just trying to find out why the kid opted out, and you can't discount a kid because he opted out, but you'd like to know why. You look at kids, for instance, in the Pac-12 or the Big Ten, and those conferences were told that they weren't going to play football. And a lot of kids went and signed with agents and went to work out. And then several weeks later, they came back and said, whoa, wait a minute, we're going to play some football. And a lot of the kids said, well, I'd have to pay an agent back money. I'm already getting trained for the draft. It doesn't make sense. You can't knock them for that. They're trying to get themselves ready for the next 40 years of their lives. And why did a kid opt out? Did he have sick parents at home? Did he have to get a job? There's some differentiations in that whole opt-out thing that I think you have to get to the root of. Why did the kid opt out, number one? And then beyond that, it comes down to, okay, no film on them, or mid-year opt-out, or bowl opt. There's all kinds of levels of opt-out last year. So some of these guys, you have to go back to 2019, and you got to get on Zoom calls with them, and just kind of, we've got our coaches right now watching all this game tape and cross-checking our scout evaluations on the college players. And, a lot of their questions are coming up to be like, why'd this kid opt out? What tape do I go see? Did he play in 20? Did he play in 19? So this whole COVID-related draft process, the information gathering is more difficult, but certainly not impossible.
Yeah, Mike, I'm curious. You sort of peripherally addressed this, I think, but after a year of the COVID year with no fans in the stands and revenues are down, is it your understanding that you'll be able to make a big strike in free agency if you want to, that the actual cash will be there, not necessarily the salary cap money?
Look, I mean, when I'm talking about free agency here, I'm talking about not knowing how many dollars we have available as an organization. And I mentioned the jigsaw puzzle. I mentioned the fact that the Raiders and every NFL team lost a bunch of money last year. So we're starting with the cap implications, less than cash. As far as cash is concerned, if you're asking if we're going to go cash over cap, that's a different conversation, and I don't have the answer on that. I don't know how many dollars we're going to have in free agency, and when I say we're going to be active, my point is we've got some holes we'd like to fill in free agency, and again, it might be day one, it might be the third week, when things calm down and there's still veteran players out there that are good football players. We're just going to have to marry up our available resources with the market. And right now, it's too early to tell you what that's going to look like.
Mike, relative to that market, it seems like there's some depth at free safety in free agency. We have to see who's actually hits the open market. But when you talk about, there are names that are pending free agents. Have you taken a look at that position, and where do you feel the depth is there at free safety potentially in free agency at that position?
Well, yeah, we've obviously looked at every position, and free safety is an interesting one. And in Gus Bradley's system, it's a little bit different in that you typically are looking at a true free safety and a true strong safety. And Abram could be probably considered more of that strong safety, and at free safety we're going to have to answer some questions. We've got Jeff Heath, Eric Harris is a free agent. We've got some guys that have played some football for us, but whether it's a draft or free agency, that's a position we've got to be very aware of, and we are.
Mike, obviously the draft process is being affected again by the COVID, as you've mentioned. But how much, based on what you've heard, how much promise do you think there is that the rest of the offseason, the OTAs, training camp, mini camp, and whatnot, will be closer to what we know from more normal?
Yeah, here's what I would tell you. Technically, OTAs and everything are still on. We haven't gotten any word that they aren't. We're preparing for that. I would make a side comment that there's a lot of talk out there that we don't need OTAs, that we don't need preseason games. And all I would tell you as an old man is that development of young players is key to the future of this game. We don't have any kind of developmental league anymore. And I know certain veteran players don't really need OTAs like young players do. But I'm telling you, without OTAs and preseason, trying to get these young players up to speed at a certain level is really difficult. And all 32 teams are going to play under the same rules. I completely understand and appreciate that. But I think that anybody that doesn't think OTAs and preseason games are critically important to the development of our youth aren't really looking at the picture correctly.
Let's do 3 more. We'll go Chris, Hondo, then Vic.
Mike, we know that the pandemic and the negativity, that how it's impacted the game of football, not minimizing that, but have there been some silver linings, maybe some things that have come out of the pandemic restrictions that when things get back to normal, you can say, hey, that benefited us? Is there any of those positives that come out of it?
Well, I think every team in the league did a nice job with the Zoom calls last year. I don't think it ever substitutes for face-to-face, but I think we've learned that in the quest for information, if we need to get a Zoom call with a young man or a coach, we can do that and get information from there. I think that's fair. As far as the rest of the pandemic, I'll tell you, it's been tough. Playing in empty stadiums, like I couldn't believe the lack of energy in the buildings. Just to have 15,000 people in Kansas City or 12 in Cleveland made a difference. I was blown away by that. You've got to bring your own energy into these empty stadiums. It was kind of crazy. I hope we never have to deal with that one again. I think, we went to the Senior Bowl this year, and Jim Nagy, an ex-scout, all by himself, was able to put together a Senior Bowl with over 100 players, and he did it impeccably. We all got tested every day. He had interviews at night, and this is kind of to your question. We had interviews at night with plexiglass up and all. He ran over 100 players through over a 4-night period, and every team in the league got a 15-minute interview with every player safely, and it was done extremely well. And I think we're proud. I think a lot of the Senior Bowl is going to get changed, excuse me, based on that process. So I do think some things came out, technology related, and trying to streamline things. But at the end of the day, I would tell all of you guys, there is no substitution for face-to-face in everything we do.
Hey, Mike, a couple of questions real quick here. Just kind of curious. We ran into Nelson Agholor a couple of weeks ago. He was doing a community event here in Las Vegas. Seems to really like Las Vegas, at least on surface, what he's telling us, whatever. But any progress on that negotiation? Also, the other one I was asking about is, you mentioned the stadium and just how key that is. And how impressive that stadium is, world-class facility. Have you had a chance to bring any people through, any free agents through to kind of wow them or woo them about that building?
No, I mean, first with Nelly. Nelly's one of my favorite people in the whole world. When I lived in Philadelphia, I did the Eagles preseason games, and Nelly was an Eagle. I was familiar with his work ethic and appreciated him back then. What he brought to the Raiders last year was off the charts. He brought a work ethic, a toughness. He brought the young guys along with him, and he brought productivity and trust with our quarterback. So all of those things he brought, we don't want to lose. We'd love to have Nelly back. That's a guy that I can't tell you how much appreciation I have for. As far as the stadium is concerned, we really haven't had a chance to do anything. You can't really, the only free agents you can bring in are street free agents. You can't bring in anybody else's property. So we would love to have a, quote, normal offseason where we get guys in here and take them out to dinner and show them that beautiful stadium. I mean, the reality is last year we were 6-2 on the road and 2-6 at home. And we can't wait to get back into that stadium where it's full and rocking and we got Raider Nation in there. And to us, just the 1 year I got in Oakland, I can't tell you how much appreciation I had for the fans and how much they truly have a passion for Raider Nation. So that's something we need. We got a big, beautiful stadium, but next year we need to fill it.